Welcome to Dub Life Diaries, the podcast where passion meets the open road. I'm Joe Person, your host, and also a lifelong dubber. Buckle up, because this ride is just beginning. This podcast is sponsored by Volksmania magazine. Good times, great cars, awesome Volksmaniacs. Visit Volksmania.com to learn more about this class-leading VW magazine. Today we've got a VW legend in the house. He's a retired Navy veteran with 33 years of service. By the way, thank you so much for your service. I appreciate it so very much. This guy's a hardcore VW enthusiast. He's got some insane stories. One that I can't wait for you guys to hear is how he fixed a broken belt with a bra strap. Yes, with a bra strap. That's going to be a cool story. This happened on the highway. I can't wait to hear about it just a little bit later. Mark Tinaz, a.k.a. Mr. Mahalo, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. This is awesome.
Yeah, man. Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. Real quick, before we get started, I'd love to give a shout out to my sponsor, which is Volksmania magazine. Watch out for our feature coming up in issue number 22. This is going to hit newsstands on, I think, any week here coming up. Might even be any day. So if you haven't already subscribed, Volksmania.com, use DubLife10 for a discount code that gives you 10% off your first issue. That's DUBLIFE, the number 1, the number 0. So DubLife10. Guys, this also helps them understand if this sponsorship has any value. So if you go there and use that discount code, they see that my listeners are subscribing. And that's the point. That's why they sponsor me. So hook us up, hook them up. Also, check us out, dublifediaries.com. Keep in mind, I'm always looking for guests. Guests are you, the VW community. You have stories. They're amazing. I want to share them. So this podcast is made for you. You can register for a guest on the top right corner of my website. Again, dublifediaries.com. Holler at me. I'll make it super simple for you. Mark, you can probably attest to that. I try to make sure you're prepared and make sure that it's a seamless, I try to do it at a time that's most convenient for you. So yeah, get in touch with me. And okay, my brother, back to you. I'd love to know, Mr. Mahalo, which from what I understand is an expression of gratitude. Where'd the name come from and how'd you get that name?
Well, I was stationed in Hawaii, and I was one of the very few folks that weren't pilots. And some of the pilots would kind of tell me, some information, and quite frankly, they like to hear them talk. They like to hear how great they are. And I, instead of saying like, yeah, thanks, I would just say mahalo, which is thank you in Hawaiian. It was a little passive aggressive. Well, what happened is the pilots were like, hey, let's, where's Mr. Mahalo? And so it kind of ended up being an identity, and people forgot what my real name was. And probably the last 15 years of my naval service, I was known as Mr. Mahalo. Yeah, so that's kind of how it happened. And then, I created my own car shows and started, having a Polynesian theme with that kind of Hawaiian mix in there. And so it's just kind of become its own animal.
Yeah, we're going to talk about those car shows here in just a little while. Real quick up front, I want to hear just a little bit about your family, a little bit about you as an individual. If you don't mind, share just a little bit about you and your family.
Yeah, so married in a blended family, 6 kids. They're all great kids. I got one in the Air Force that's coming home from a deployment. Got one that's an actor in LA.
Oh, cool.
I got couple bonus kids, one daughter that just got married, another one in the DC area, got one going to University of California, San Marcos. So my wife and I are pretty busy. We want to get them out of the house and then visit once in a while, and then kind of have our alone time. So yeah,
man.
We're really good. We're super healthy. Yeah, you just kind of want them to hey, go out there, but don't send me the bill, so.
So mine are at that age where you're probably 5, maybe 7 years ahead of me. My oldest is 19. And then I go all the way down to my teens, a 14-year-old. Then we jump way down and go to a 5-year-old. But
you're busy.
Yeah, but those teens, like I said, I'm close to that. I'm not quite there. Right now I'm at the stage where I'm like, damn, they just got a job and I kind of miss them. I kind of miss them being here all day.
Yeah, you'll get over that. You'll get over
I bet I will. I bet I will. Growing up in Northern Virginia, tell me what that was like.
It's a community that's right next to DC, but it has all four seasons. In fact, we went back there a couple weeks ago, and it was the cherry blossoms were all coming out at the
Ooh,
nation's capital. Real
yeah.
beautiful weather. Then it kind of like really goes into the back into the 40s and 30s, and then maybe a couple days back in the 60s. Definitely hot and humid in the summertime, cold and wet snow in the winter, but just a beautiful area. I mean, there's a lot of energy being next to the nation's capital,
Sure.
but it's definitely it's a lot of history and a great community. And it's one of the first that I remember a bug out that I went to that was I was probably about 19, where it was my first experience where these VW people are freaks. I mean, it was pretty cool. It was a big, like a retired airport that, like, I think lost its certification, and it was just packed with VWs and people selling their cars, selling parts. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, big swap meet action going on. Yeah, I went to DC this year for the first time with my family, mind you,
Mhm.
and it was an amazing experience. My wife and I had been wanting to go, but they were just too young.
Yeah.
We did some other things, from California all the way into Arizona and different lakes and monuments and Grand Canyon,
Right.
that type of stuff. We wanted to do DC, but eventually we did. So we were there for July 4th last year. And to my surprise, the city was amazingly clean. I wasn't expecting that. I'm expecting New York, I'm expecting LA, I'm expecting big city vibe. Nah, man, they keep it in check around there, and I kind of value that. Now, it was Independence Day, so maybe that had something to do with it. There was tons of events and things going on, lots of energy and activity, but man, I was like, "Damn, this place is pretty nice."
Yeah,
So,
I believe the change of that was when they decided to rebuild Anacostia, where I think the Nationals play. And so that whole area was, I mean, it was bad for decades. And they rebuilt that area, and I think the energy was so positive, they just continued to clean throughout the city. And
sure.
DC takes a lot of pride in making sure that there's a lot of visitors, the Smithsonian's there.
Right, we
So
did
they
that too, yeah.
yeah. So it's a great city to visit. It's the only place I know in the world where all the major museums are free, and you actually see some really great stuff.
Yeah, yeah, I'm gonna concur. We did, and my kids were even entertained. If that
Right.
meant anything to anybody, my kids.
Yeah, yeah,
All
man.
right, so let's talk about how you first got into VWs.
Yeah, so it's my parents they owned two Super Beetles, one a 73 and one a 74, and I'm gonna date myself, and it was the typical beige semi-automatic auto stick,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And that's like a subculture, in that world. A lot of people, they go, "Where's your clutch?" And it's like, "I don't have one." And I tell this story all the time, and I date myself, is my father kidnapped me to sit in the car and keep him company while we were in the gas lines in the early 70s. And so I'm like 4 or 5 years old, and we're literally waiting to put gas in the car, and I just started asking him questions, and it was, "What does this button do? What does this button do?" And really, it just kind of triggered, and then I got nothing to do. Remember, there's no iPhone, there's no iPad to keep you,
Oh,
you know,
brother, I'm right here with you.
occupied, right?
Uh,
And so I just kind of looked at the owner's manual for the just pictures and try to understand stuff. And the Super Beetle has like the front, defroster with the vent on it, and it had like just different buttons. And my dad just started explaining, well, you mix that with the heat. And I said, well, where does the heat come from? So he showed the heater valves that are next to the emergency brake, and like how things were gone. Yeah, I mean, I was just very intrigued by it. And my sister inherited the car when she started driving, and then she went off and went on to college and university, and then I inherited it when I turned 16, and it became really my identity. I mean, everything was about, getting the bug and go over there and do stuff. And so that's what kind of triggered knowledge of it. And, I think bugs were kind of a dime a dozen back then in the mid 80s. It's usually kids' first cars.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like, you kind of like, oh, what's your bug? Oh, okay, great. It doesn't, I didn't think it was the energy wasn't there, I think, in the 80s yet. And I remember asking my dad, what's a Gia? I didn't understand what that was, a Gia. And so we saw one, and I said, I thought that was a Porsche. And he goes, yeah. He's like, it sure does. It does look like one, right? So it was that kind of thing. And ever since then, I've been kind of hooked.
Awesome. So we're right about here where you got your first car. You're obviously in high school. Any crazy VW memories or anything that stands out on high school stories, having a Volkswagen?
Well, I think you're gonna. I think this is the story you're looking for. So was now I try to explain this to people, and they don't understand. You don't have like a flip phone back then, and so
No
my girlfriend and
navigation.
I.
All right, we were using maps, y'all.
I know, and the person sitting next to you, is like, okay, G12. We're. So
The AAA triptych. You remember those?
yeah,
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 yeah.
exactly. I'm glad you got it. So we were coming from Manassas, where Bull Run is, and we're on our way back to Northern Virginia, and we're taking the back roads, and it's what you hear. It's that pow, and that the alternator belt that has a very distinct sound when it snaps, and so I pulled over. And so it's kind of like you could tell it's overheating. So I'm sitting there, and my dad always told me, have a spare belt in the car. And at that point, I kind of knew how to change the belt. And I had just given the belt to a guy that had a VW thing, and his belt broke and he didn't have one. And so I gave him that one. So I was like, all right, cool. So, but I never remembered to like get another one. And so, I mean, it's just gone. There's nothing left. And so I go down, and there's a Kmart, which I don't even know. Some of these young kids don't even know what a Kmart is. And there was like a payphone. So I called my dad, and he goes, "We'll use the spare belt." And I said, "Well, I forgot I gave it to somebody." And so he's like, "We'll go into Kmart and see if they have something." And Kmart was not mechanically available back then. Now I think Walmart has all the cool stuff. And so he said, "Well, who are you with?" And I said, "Well, I'm here with my girl. I won't say who it is, but I was with my girl." And he goes, "Is she wearing nylons?" And I said, "No, she's not." And he goes, "Is she good? Well, does she have her bra on?" And I said, I looked at her, and I was like, "Yeah, she has a bra on." And she goes, "All right, this is what I want you to do. Ask her for her bra." And so I call out her name, and she's like, "Are you crazy?" This is two 17-year-olds. And so he said, "There's cutting." He said, "In your little tool bag," that's where the spare belt was, "there's some cutting shears, like industrial cutting shears." He said, "Just, try to cut out the cups." And then he goes, "Just you wrap it twice and loop it around. Just you have to like really put an effort and then clip it in there." And he says, "Don't go past 25 miles an hour. And you'll hear it slip when you start going fast, but it should get you to the gas station." And so now I gotta, well, negotiate for this bra. And so wrap it around, clip it, and then start it, and it's actually working, but I can see that it's slowly like it's not going to last long. And so we get in the car, and I drive, and that's the thing about the semi-automatic. I don't have to use the clutch. You know what I mean, to like manipulate the speed. So I just leave it, and I go, and my dad was right. As soon as about 25 mile an hour, you'd hear that like it would slip. And about 7 miles later, we pulled into a Sunoco, and I was able in there, and the thing looked like it came back from, uh, a war zone, and I tried to give it back to my girlfriend. She's like, why do I want this back? What's wrong with you? So the best part was watching her. I think she just was holding up her puppies the whole time because the whole car was shaking. But
Unbelievable, man. What a cool story.
I've shared that with a couple of people, and they understood the math, and they have used nylons. I've heard about nylons being used. They're in Brazil. I think they use a type of like a zip wire, specific, like a temporary zip wire that goes around, and it creates enough tension in there to get you to for an emergency.
Right.
But I don't think anyone's used a bra.
That's pretty cool. Transitioning from the Super Beetle to today's 66 convertible. Tell me what's special about this 66 convertible.
Well, you're a parent, priorities are braces, and and I was in the military. I was transferring a lot, and I really wanted to get back into a vintage car, and I wanted to get back into a VW, and I had a '73 convertible. Someone was very generous, basically just have it. I paid it a fair amount of money, but it was a really great car. But there was something about the 60s and the way the flat window and the way that there's all metal. And it was basically pretty much an open adoption with a family. And, they kind of interviewed, and, we became friends, and they drove it from Yuba City, Sacramento, and brought it all the way back down to Temecula, California. And it was ruby red. It was gorgeous. I fell in love with her. Her name is Ruby. We're Facebook friends with the previous owners. They're always asking about updates with the car.
Oh, so cool.
And yeah, and it's a great car. It's been fun to drive. I pulled the 1300 out, put a 1600 in there just because I needed to get to it like 60 to 65 on the highway, because Californians drive incredibly fast. But if I can at least get to the right lane, I get like a wave or a thumbs up. If I was in a Honda, I'd get the finger if I was driving 60 or 65.
That's funny. Yeah, I had a
Yeah,
Beetle. I had a Beetle that did 55 at best.
at best.
At
Yeah.
best. At best. So I remember that feeling. But 65, yeah, you're upgrading now.
Yeah, just a great car. The previous owners did a little bit of work to it, and then I put some other accessories on there and cleaned it up, and then saved a lot of money. And just right now it was refurbished in 87. So new paint job, new top, new interior. And I was at a place where I was like, okay, I kind of need to get some stuff done so my kids can enjoy it for another, 30, 40 years, and it's all done. And I found a great guy who's doing it, very patient. And, there's a sense of vulnerability when you get a car redone, right? There's,
Yeah.
because they tell you that, hey, I'm going to pull some stuff off and I'm going to find some things, be ready for it. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this car is 50 years old. What's he going to find? And he was very sincere. He was very honest. And he said, hey, I found two small cracks. I'm going to weld those. But he's like, your car is super solid, and, it's going to be a great car for the next 50 years. And so I was so stoked that it was too small, and they were hidden from the top, when you bring down top. So he was able to zap those.
Okay.
Yeah, so new interior, new top, a new paint job, new running boards, all the cool stuff.
Yeah. So I know this is I fathom with what you're saying and describing, because that's kind of, when somebody else has your baby, so to speak, and you're almost waiting, anticipating hourly, by the minute, by the day, what that feedback's going to be. And some of us, we look great on the outside, and when we get down and start breaking some metal down, we're like, oh, there's some stuff in here. And I think that's what you were referring to. Other times they break those cars down and they say what been said to you, wow, this thing's in really good shape. I've seen it
Right.
go both ways. I've seen them look great on the outside and be pretty torched on the inside. And, so yeah. Biggest moment for you during this build so far? Any other surprises? I know just two cracks and it's in pretty good shape, but any other surprises?
No, no, not really. I did want to just visit on this. What I think is great about the community, like the maintenance side of the community and the folks that redo stuff. I think the integrity of the folks that take care of our cars that are beyond our capabilities in the garage is so it's to us, that's a big deal. And I think that I have a roller deck. I don't even know if we have roller decks anymore, but I have a bunch of phone numbers of people that love and have a passion to restore vehicles at what I call the carcass level. I mean, it's stripped, it's all gone, and they take their time. And yes, some of them are not cheap, but they provide you a quality product. And there's a couple of them here in California that there's a waiting list to get involved with them. And they take great pride in their work. They take great pride in their welding is like an art now. It's not just, it's especially with vintage cars. And I think Randy Carlson and I were talking about this one time is, there's no more spare parts. They're not really. It's not like you call Wolfsburg in Germany, but we do have the schematics. And the schematics get to the mechanics or the welders and the engineers, and they're so good they can make them. And as long as we have the schematics, I think we're super blessed to have stuff replaced, metal wise.
Yeah, no, good call. And yes, true art. We got a guy here that specializes in rust and metal up in Sanford, Florida. Shout out Jason Davis. But yeah, it's a special, and like you said, there's a Rolodex. I was smiling when you were saying that because I'm thinking like I've got one person that's a specialist in every like one category. You got one interior guy,
Yeah.
you got one guy for rims and tires. You got one guy for paint. You got one guy for metal, right? So yeah, I was smiling through that. And then you
So
got
I got my
one good
tires. When I
mechanic.
got my tires, a guy that works at a tire store is in my VW club. And I said, "Hey, I need these tires." And he said, "Gotcha." And so I roll in and it's kind of mechanical. It's like all the regular newer cars roll in and they jack them up, and you hear those. It's like, "Hey man, we're not in it's like some kind of race." And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so he greets me and he understands that that vehicle is tender and it's old. And so he comes in and he tells the guy, jack one side up at a time, take the tire off with the gun, but when you put the lug nuts back on, you're going to do it by hand, and then we're going to crank it up, by like mechanically, not with the air gun, right? All it takes is, when they strip everything, and I've had that happen before, but it's that community which I appreciate that understands. We're not at a NASCAR changing tires, and so you just meet people in your clubs that say, "Hey, stop by my shop. I'll take care of you." And not net. I don't need the discount. I need the attention to detail to respect my vehicle.
Craftsmanship.
Yeah.
I've got a buddy down here that's a mechanic, very mechanical guy. His choice is air cooled Volkswagens, and
Hmm.
he does it out of his house. And he's just special. He's a special dude. He cares about the outcome almost as much as you do, and it shows in his work. Let's talk about if money was no object. Do you have your dream build already, or would you dream up something else?
So as a romantic, right? Yeah, and you win the lottery. You kind of start picking and choosing. I probably would. There's two cars that I'm really attracted to. One is the first, and I think it's 62 is the first camper the bus came out with, and I think it was 62. And there's some arguments like, they probably made them earlier, but they were subcontracted. But I am in the have that romance with the wooden, everything's wood in there and the
Okay.
sink and stuff.
Yeah.
But I think for a Beetle, it would probably be like the 52 split ragtop with the crotch vents.
Mm.
And I try to, they're hard to find in that category. So not only does it have to be a split, not only does it have to have crotch vents, it has to be a ragtop. And not a convertible, because a lot of people think the ragtop is a convertible. And the ones on the outside, the non-VW people do. So I explained it to him and I showed one to a friend of mine and he goes, "This is the sickest car I have ever seen." And they just thought it was so cool that pull the levers or push the levers and the crotch vents, open, and the split has the console more towards the middle with the glove boxes on the side. It just has that very basic 6 volt, I call it Fred Flintstone engine, just barely gets you anywhere.
Mhm.
And and I'm not a pea green color kind of guy, but that car is pea green. I mean, that's every original model that I've seen that's a ragtop is pea green. And there's the semaphores are part of that, that uniqueness that I think we all like. Like, people go, what does it do? And so I have to like do the choreography of like, putting my hand up, and they're like, it does that? I'm like, oh yeah, it's pretty sick.
Let's touch on a road trip that you had mentioned when we didn't have discussion, but I saw your bio stuff.
Yeah.
The DC to Seven Springs, this Pennsylvania road trip. Talk about what made that trip unforgettable.
So that's a ski trip. So it was, again, I'm dating myself, is a friend of ours loaded up his our gear in his dad's Ford Bronco 2. Another friend of mine had a Subaru Brat, which was that weird truck Subaru made in the 80s. And then I had my Bug. And we went to Seven Springs to go skiing, and mine was the only car that made it up in the snow. And, I was kind of like, and so to me was everyone started piling in my car, which is freezing. There's not enough heat for everybody. It's just freezing cold. But it was a 4 or 5 hour trip, and it was one of my favorite memories is young men that, we just kind of like loaded up and decided to go skiing to Seven Springs, Pennsylvania. And it was just that irony of like, you got a Bronco 2, which is the pride of Ford
Right.
back then,
Back
of
then.
being able to do anything.
Right.
Subaru Brat had this nostalgia romance with, it can go through anything. It's a Subaru. And
And
then here it comes, Mark's, 1974 semi-automatic auto stick, you know, with no heat. And that was the other experience. That's the first time it was so cold that I used the ice scraper inside the vehicle.
well,
That's how cold it was. Yeah.
that's a great memory.
So that was like, I went to my high school reunion, and a couple guys that I went skiing with that weekend brought up that story. And, it was so cool to be like, all right, guys, we'll see you up there. So the bad part of that story is the guy with the Bronco had all our skis. So we actually had to wait for him to get up the mountain.
But he did eventually get up.
He did. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you do a lot of car shows. What describe it for me in as many words as you can. What's it like pulling up in your 66 convertible to, a car show locally?
Well, the car scene in California is well organized, very disciplined. There's some wonderful cars here. I think Mother Nature and the environment allows the longevity of the vehicles to be here, especially some of the older Datsuns, a lot of the Americanas and Volkswagens that come out. And so they're well organized. They have definitely sectional stuff for like foreign versus hot rod versus Americana. And so I feel generally, and I kind of Facebook dork out, and I feel like every weekend, somewhere within 75 miles of where I live, there's a show, coffee and cars, a hangout, a road trip. And so there's a lot of car shows here, and Mother Nature allows you to have those because it rarely rains here. Trust me, we do need the rain in California, but you can schedule something out, 6 months out. Like for the car shows that I do, I put them out about 4 months out. And so just a shout out for mine, April 27th will be my car show at Somerset Winery. That's the fifth annual Mr. Mahalo. And it's a mix of all vehicles, Volkswagens, Americana. There's some hot rods. There's a guy that brought in the car the Munsters drove, right, with the cut off Model T with the station wagon. I mean, it was crazy. Guy came in with a hearse, had a coffin in the back. It was crazy. But those cars come out here with a sense of pride that's associated with having a little bit of American history on here. And
Your show that you're talking about, That's yours, right? Don't
Yeah, that's mine, and
You
it's
got the
they
title number one in wine country, right?
well, yeah, it's a joke about it because it says number one car show in wine country by unenthusiastic spouses who could care less about cars but love wine.
Hey,
And
they got my vote.
I have a real I'm telling you, I got some friends of mine that come out and their wives will not go to a car show, but they will come to mine. And it's at a winery, and I won't mention any names, but I got a firefighter friend of mine and his wife's a nurse, and she enjoyed the car show so much she had to call in sick the next day. Uh,
Hey,
and
success.
he has a they have a camper bus. I think he just put her in the back on their way home. And this year he called and he said, "Yeah, we're both taking the day off on Monday." So it's a
Awesome.
great show. I'm super proud of, putting it together. And there's a lot of people that have just incredible histories about their car. I mean, it's unbelievable.
I know it. I know it. That's why I'm doing this podcast, man.
Yeah, I met the lady. So I'll tell you this quick story is she had a 67 Shelby, one of the Eleanor cars, and she has the poster of Gone in 60 Seconds. And so, when they sign up, it just says, 67 Mustang. And, I don't see really what it is. And so she comes out and she has a glass of white wine and a cigarette in her hand. And I was like, "Ma'am, are you the original owner to this?" And she like takes a drag. She said, "You see that idiot over there?" And I'm like, "Which one?" She goes, "That one over there." And I was like, "Yeah, that idiot came home in 1967 with this car, and we were struggling to make ends meet. My girlfriends and their husbands were getting married. They're getting married. They were buying their own home, and we were in a one-bedroom apartment struggling, and this idiot comes home with this car." And I'm like, I could tell she's still resentful. So she goes, "We made up 6 months later. He was still sleeping on the couch. They made up. She got pregnant, and they named the car Shelby. And they named the daughter Shelby." And she said, they put it in the garage. They didn't drive it for a long time, and then he kind of fixed it up. And he had gone to a car show in Orange, and a production guy was like, "Hey, would you be interested in having your car in a movie?" And so they negotiated, and her car isn't Gone in 60 Seconds. Their car was in one of the scenes, and I think it was when he was pickpocketing, or he was trying to pick the lock to the starter. I can't remember, but it was in one of those scenes. But just a great family, just wonderful to meet them. You meet all the guys, and what I'm starting to find is the legacy families like Randy that we talked about,
Yeah.
who inherited cars and have really embraced themselves to the culture and the memories that are associated with that car, and they bring it to their kids.
So how many cars come to this car show?
So we're sold out again for the third row, but I have 65 asphalt parking spots, and then we have a light gravel overflow. And guys don't want to park they don't want to park on the streets or in the gravel. So it's people register early and they get in there, and we offer wine samples. That's why I think the spouses like it a lot. They like their red and their white wines. And sangria, that was the other one I forgot. But that's at Somerset Winery. Shout out to them. They're a great organization, family-owned winery. Kurt Teed is the owner there. He's a big supporter of veterans and guys that are getting out of the military and doing their own thing. Just a class act family, a great winery, and whether you go there for the car show or not, you need to check it out.
Aside from the shows, what's your VW road trip bucket list?
Yeah, that's it's funny. I feel I hear things and I try to do investigation, but there's a lot of guys that will ship their car to Chicago and they take the Route 66 all the way back to Santa Monica. And I would love to get a bunch of VWs to do that and really experience the Americana, what I call, all the side roads, kind of like the movie Cars, the cartoon, like just take all the side roads, go to the, world's greatest apple pie shop, stop by, the guess what is the biggest ball of yarn or whatever, and just do things. And I think that even if I did it with a bus or a bug, like we would just camp out and just make our way.
Oh,
I
that
really,
sounds like fun.
there's something about that road trip, and in our car club, our VW car club, we do a road trip to Julian, California, which is about an hour drive going
What
into the desert.
what's the
It's
name?
a
What's the name of your car club?
air cooled, but it's spelled like the German version with the Her.
Okay.
And we go out and we go to Julian, and there's like 60, 70 cars. I mean, I feel bad for young families because it's punch buggy for at least, an hour, when we're past they just some guy's arm is gonna be black and blue. But we go to Julian, and there's something about caravanning on a long road trip like that.
Mhm.
And everyone just kind of stops, they look, and it's just all the old VWs, all the bugs, all the things, all the gears, all the square back. It's just there, and it triggers all the memories people have. Like, oh, I went to high school with a guy that had a car like, oh, I dated somebody. Oh, my parents had a car like that.
It's the stories. That's what I'm after. I've heard so many, and I've been a VW guy since high school. I
Mhm.
got my first one in '96, which was the year after I graduated. But
Yeah.
nonetheless, I fantasized about air cooled cars, of all kinds since then, and I've always had them. And I think the community is just it's something that needs to be celebrated. It's special. It's definitely different. Something that you had touched on earlier is that vibe. It was such a common car when we were younger, and like
Mhm.
everybody has a story. Everybody owned one. Everybody has something like that attached to an old Volkswagen. And the old phrase, the smiles per gallon, when people try to talk about them, that really rings true to me because everywhere I go, and it's not just because it's a classic car. It doesn't even matter if it's a nice one or an ugly one or rusted out. Everywhere I go, people stop, they ask questions, they talk to me about it, and they bring up their memories. Oh man, I had this happen in my life at this time. And you're like, dang, dude, it's everywhere, everywhere. So I love that about our.
You can't be an introvert. You can't be an introvert owning a Volkswagen.
No, because they're coming out of the woodwork to talk to
I
you,
mean,
ask
they're coming.
questions, and share their memories. And yeah,
Well, not only do they share their memories, they will tell you things that they did to their car to do the up. I mean, they just tell you, "Yeah, I had this bus and I recircuited this so I could have this," and you just have to listen
absolutely.
and you go in there and you're like, "Yeah," and the simplicity of that is when I owned my bus, they they got in my bus, and it was a wet tin top Westie, and they were sitting on the bench seat, and they just were looking around, and they said, "I forgot the smell. I forgot the way it." He goes, "I just," and you hear the same story from every guy, including me.
Mhm.
It's like, I should have never sold my car. I should have never sold my bus. I should have never.
Yeah.
And kids need braces, things happen.
Oh,
But there's a romance, and the technology is funny. In that bus, I'm driving, and my son is in the back, and he goes, "Hey, Dad, I didn't know they came with iPhone holders." And I'm driving, and I'm thinking, "What?" He goes, "There's a spot here to put your iPhone. I did you know that?" And I was like, "What is he babbling about?" So we got up there, we got out of the car, and I turn around, and he goes, "See, iPhone holder." And I said, "Dylan, that's an ashtray." And he goes, "What?" And he goes, "That's an ashtray." And he said, "For what?" And I said, "For smoking." He goes, "Why would anyone smoke in their car? That's stupid." And I was like, "Well,
yeah.
that's what we did back then."
Yeah. '70s and '80s, man. We were huffing and puffing in the cars. Top up, windows up.
Yeah, and I think it's funny because I'll say, the car lighter, I'll still say, like, "Is there a car lighter in there?" And my son goes, "I don't know." And I was like, "The plug." And he goes, "You mean the auxiliary?" And I was like,
Right.
"Oh," it's like different terminology.
Yeah, it's funny though because this technology age has happened like right before our eyes. My son, who's now 17, turning 18, I remember when he was about 7, maybe 8 years old. I forget the circumstance, but we were at this woman's house and my cell phone was dead, and I had asked him to go inside and call his mom. And I said, just they have a classic phone on there, so you'll just pick up, you'll wait for the dial tone, and you'll dial mom's number. And he goes, the wait, pick up and do what?
Yeah.
Right? Didn't even know what a dial tone was. So yeah, man, I feel that for sure. It's
And
been
he may not even know his mom's phone number because he just
right,
has
right.
a speed dial.
You're probably right. At that time, we had a practice in our house from about 5, 6 years old where we would make them repeat like our phone numbers, so they, no matter what, they could get some
Sure.
help. So that was one phone number he knew back then, what was
Yeah.
mom's, but he didn't know what a dial tone was. He was like, a dial tone. And I tell that story a lot because it's just funny. Of this information age, we realize how fast technology has actually improved
Right.
in this little short 50-year span of life. But yeah, man.
I was very apprehensive, not necessarily teaching how to drive the Bug as a clutch vehicle, but t- teaching my kid to drive when we had a Honda Accord was very safe. Like there's still stuff you need to talk about, like, this is what you do, how you turn, let the steering wheel go, it'll naturally, you have to teach all
Pull
that stuff.
itself out. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so there's like that part of the simplicity of owning a modern car was great for my son to learn. When we got in the Bug, I was on him and I said, look, you need to now can't be on your cell phone. You can't, there's no Bluetooth in here. When you drive a car like this, you have to be very well disciplined to understand the dynamics of what your capabilities are driving this car. So when you're in the Honda and you punch it, it's going to kind of get up and go. The Bug is not going to get up and go. You need to like stay in the right lane. You need to be out of the way and just mind your own business and and focus. And I said, because there's in Temecula, California, the driving here is a bit aggressive. And so a lot of people run red lights. So I always tell them, like, you need to be careful. You need to do this. But when you're driving a car without disc brakes, without power steering, it's a different culture. It's a different type of driving. And I'm really grateful that he was patient. One of my sons was patient enough to learn how to do that. My other son was like, well, where's the cup holder? Where do I put my, I'm like, all right, dude, just,
Yeah. Hey, just get out.
yeah.
Let's go get in the Honda.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Equally, yeah, I've got two sons. My daughter could care less. She's driven. My wife has a Carmen Ghia, a 71, and it's
Mm,
the auto clutch. So my daughter has driven it. She's a little princess ish. You know,
yeah.
she. I'm not gonna say she'd say where's the, the cup holder, but maybe along the lines of, does the radio have Bluetooth?
Right.
And she's making
Right.
judgments if not. But two of my boys, they like driving it. They like driving it. They like the, how it's so old, and how you have to use the gas pedal to start it, and they get it. One of them, Elijah, he takes engines apart, and he's very mechanically gifted, and it's just stuff that he's just picked up as he's just been young. He rode motorcycles, and he's 16 now, as a Subaru. Has his own car, and he zips all over town, but he's still my little mechanical guy.
Yeah, I think the kids, it's starting to be really cool to own and know how to operate the vintage car.
Yeah, I
And
think you're right.
and it's kind of coming back where, what is that? And,
Yeah.
the one great thing of owning a vintage car is you meet all the other guys, whether it's a 66 Chevelle,
Yeah, the
the
community.
big one that's coming out now, and I think in Southern California that have kind of made a big push are the original Datsun 240Zs. They're starting to kind of, had a real tender straight six, 4 speed. It was designed to be driven. And so those cars are coming back, and guys are really, they're getting into it. What I'm apprehensive about is a guy came up and goes, "Man, I really want my daughter to have a VW Bug, just to kind of get around and do stuff." And I always tell him, like, be careful. You're talking about a vehicle that doesn't have these amenities your regular car has. So be mindful that you're going to have to teach your daughter that it's a cute car. It's cute that it's got a little bug on it. You put eyelashes, on the front headlights and be girly girl Volkswagen. I think that's great.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it's not forgiving in an accident.
At all. And you're pissed because, usually it's nowadays an investment. And yeah, there has to be a level of, I think, skill attained behind the wheel, etc., before the respect is there.
Yeah.
But once that respect's there, you can almost tell. You
Well, I think the other part that's blows their mind is, you mean we can push start this car? Like, I remember, like, what are you talking about, Dad? And I was like, because my son drove it and he left the headlights on. And so he there's no beeping noise, there's no warning. And so he killed the battery. And so I was like, that's why. And he goes, "Well, why doesn't it just turn off automatically?" And I said, "It does turn off automatically when you turn it off. That's how you got to turn it off." So we push started and he was in shock. He just couldn't fathom, like, you could just push start a car. But we
I
couldn't
got
do
a
that.
similar story.
Well, yeah, we couldn't do that with a Honda because, I
No.
mean, it's just different.
Well, you could if you had a stick shift.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But I totally I get it. I have a similar story with my 2 middle boys. They were so fascinated with it. They were like, "So you mean to tell me there really is no getting stuck then? 'Cause you just push start it." I'm like, "Well, I mean, yeah, to a there's other things that can get in the way too, naturally, and you'll learn about those over time, but yeah, they were fascinated too with that simplicity.
Yeah.
And that, again, that's kind of when like it's starting to click a little bit even for them. There's no way out of my 5 kids that a couple of them aren't Volkswagen just fanatics. There's no way. One of
Well,
them,
you're blessed to have that because, out of all the kids, I think, with my blended family, I think, half of them think it's cool and the other half are
they try to
more
understand
like,
why the
how
other
can I.
ones think it's cool.
Yeah, well, I think they all know Ruby. I mean, that's what I call my convertible. I think they all know Ruby is like, I call it the wife that doesn't talk back, and they have great, and then some of them are, they kind of want to drive it. I'm negotiating for a bus right now. Every time I think I'm ready, I think the stock market goes down again. So I feel like I may have to wait, but we're excited to go camping as a young family and go do stuff. There's a lot of great spots here, but I think we're all really lucky to share the information and the knowledge that's associated with these cars. I remember this dude came up at a gas station and I popped the front hood to put gas in and he goes, "Far out, man. Where do you put the gas?" And I was like, "Right in here." And he's like, "Geez, dude, that's sick," And it's like, "Yeah, that's kind of where it." And he goes, "Well, where's the engine?" And I was like, "It's in the back." He's like, "No way." He was so removed, so removed.
That's so cool, man. It really is, because it's a similar experience for all of us in this culture when we're just out and about, going about our everyday stuff. That's the stuff that we see for sure.
Now in
Let's talk.
Florida, in Florida, how do you deal with the humidity and the rust with the cars? I think it's always an ongoing battle.
Yeah, you protect and get rid of the cancer.
Yeah.
Otherwise, yeah, you're up shit's creek. It's
Yeah.
bad down here, man, with the humidity. I lived in Colorado 12 years, and some of my favorite times were finding old cars that didn't run anymore in the back of some barn somewhere, some back lot in Colorado. Not 1 ounce of rust anywhere.
Mm.
Just I miss that about the West Midwest. Not here. Here it rusts big time, and there's really no way to combat it other than to service it,
Yeah. Yeah. And
protect it, and service it when it becomes a problem.
so I have a friend that lives in Jupiter.
Yeah, East Coast, a little south,
Yeah.
just a little
And
little south of West Palm.
yeah, and he goes every Sunday, man. I hose my car with fresh water. He has a little VW, washes it and gets and just rinses any type of salt or
Called air
any.
corrosion. Yeah, it's real.
Yeah, and he says he's like, you just have to rinse your car every week and just keep up with it, because he's like,
Yeah.
I can't afford to like get new parts every 2-3 years.
No, it's
Um,
real. Yeah,
and
it's
you got to garage it. It's
yep.
that simple.
We do car covers too. You know,
Yeah.
if you can't always garage them. Sometimes like my thing. I take my thing out all the time. I want to drive it all the time. That's my choice. I
Yeah.
have other cars that are more mechanically friendly with AC and all that good stuff, but I can't put the windshield down and drop the top on those. There's just
And
nothing
that's I'm
nothing really
great you
like
brought
it.
that up because the thing is there's a love-hate relationship with things, I think, in the VW community. People are like, "Oh, man, it looks like a box," and I'm like, and some people are like, "Oh, it's so cool. It's like the poor man's Jeep." And I think I think that they're just a great chapter in the VW community, especially the ones that, they take the doors off,
They
they
do.
they put the windows down. When I was in Hawaii, a guy had created like a roll bar on top and then had put an extension over the front windshield so the shield can go down, but he could put his surfboards
Oh, you can still keep his rack up. Yeah, get the
on
wind
top.
in his face. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but it was, he could not stop and have somebody, you know, wanna come up to him and ask him about it and how cool is it, and I just think all the cars are just so special, they're
Yeah,
unbelievable.
it's another car everywhere I go. Same thing. I mean, just a few days ago, I'm pulling into the parking lot, and this guy is crossing the street on a bike. And as he crosses the street, he sees me slowing down for the intersection to stop for him to pass in front of me, so I can then continue. And he circles around the car, and he goes, "Whoa, man! Air cooled Volkswagen, man, cool!" And he takes off on his bike, and I'm just like, dude, I can't go anywhere. And that's the love of it, man. That for
Well,
sure.
I think that we're really lucky to be a part of that, and I think, another really great road trip would be to ship my car to Europe and drive it all the way to Wolfsburg. That's just like that would be awesome. Just a group of people going to Wolfsburg. I have yet to be in the factory, and I've had some close opportunities to go, and something always comes up, but that's
That
kind of.
Route 66 thing, man, that sounds like something that might need to be organized one day for
Well,
20
I'm retired now.
guys.
That's what my wife tells me. She goes,
Yeah,
"You're retired from the military. You got time to put this stuff together, you know?"
that'd be pretty cool, man. I mean, that'd be some pretty awesome stuff
Yeah, I think, and
if it was even documented.
well, the other one too is I think AAA has a roadmap of the historical Route 50 that goes from Ocean City, Maryland, all the way to Sacramento. And I think, AAA, if you own a VW and you're not a member of AAA, you're a fool because I can't tell you how many times
I got
we've had.
AAA, buddy.
Yeah, just call AAA, dog, have it towed.
Yep.
But they have particular roadmaps that give you historical routes. But I think that if I did a 66, it would be a year of putting it together, calling, I wouldn't say vendors, but like the hotels or the
Yeah.
historical sites and see who's invested and who's not. But
Oh man, that'd be so cool. Yeah. Let me know if that ever metastasizes.
oh yeah,
I'm in.
trust me.
Sign me up. Yeah, that'd be really cool, man. Air cooled Temecula. Earlier, you had spelled it out as the German, so that's the HERR, right?
Yep. Yeah, cool.
So yeah, tell me about this group. What makes this group so great?
Well, air cooled is us. We have a president, Sebastian, who also does work on my car and works on other. He's the president. Great organization, Temecula. A great group of people. We meet every other week, and then we try to do a run. And it's one of those where everyone contributes to something about your car or your bus or your Gia, whatever, and it's just a great group of human beings. And in a world where, there's the right, there's the left, astroturf versus real grass, it's a great balance of people that greet each other with a hug or a handshake or a thank you, and be in a place where, hey man, I was looking for this, and they go, dude, this is what happened to me, this is what I did, and you're like, oh, who knew? We all rally around each other when a car was broken down. We kind of, especially you just stop. What do you need? Oh, you got this, I got one of those. Great. We are critical of making sure that, and I don't know if you experience this too, but we pop open the hoods to kind of look at stuff, or the back hood, I should say. And we were surprised how some of these younger kids did not have the clips on the fuel lines going in their fuel filter. And they just thought it's stuck in there so well that they shouldn't worry about clips. And all the old timers, we kind of tell them like, hey man, you need it. That's how you get a fire.
That line a
And they go,
little off in
nah,
there.
man, it's like really tight. It's good. And I said, dude, you need to like get this thing fixed. And so we just give them clips. We have little tool bags, and we say, just put it on, man. Just put it on.
We
Just put it on.
we relocate them here.
It's
We're not.
true that.
I know it is. We're not even messing around. We just relocate though. We take them away, from that whole area of potential problems, because that's our biggest fear. Is the engine fire, because they're so damaging.
Yeah, I think the one thing about the club is Sebastian does a really great job keeping the community together. We do rallies. We had some kids that were pretty sick, and we would do a caravan in front of their house and honk the horns. And it's
Oh,
like,
cool.
we have a guy that's got the dark Herbie, so his is like completely black with the stripe with the 53 on it, and that's like a different. We have the super patina ones where you can't even think that they're running and they just show up. We have
Then
some
they
great
pop the
veterans.
hood and the engine's like a $10,000 engine.
So we do stuff like that. My mom was her 85th birthday, and she wanted, she's like, I don't want to make a big deal, but she loved the little Volkswagens because that's what she drove before my sister and I took over it. And so they caravaned over, and there was about 15, 20 cars that came around her in front of her cars honking, and she just was in tears. She was super grateful that the community thought of her. And I took her to the one of a couple meets, and they all take turns sitting down with her, and they have a glass of wine with her, and she asks questions about the car. And, it's just a great club of great human beings.
So what's brotherhood for life? Explain that mentality.
I think for me, it's when I see a VW on the side of the road, even when I'm driving my regular car, I always pull over and I'll say, "Hey man, I got a VW. What do you need?" And he says, "Man, I can't." He's like, "I think it's the fuel pump. It's this." And sometimes we can fix it together. Sometimes it's kaput. That's what happens. And then sometimes it's a loose wire that you want to, I would say, pull out your hair, but obviously you've been past that point. And so so we find it, and it gets started, and it's a thank you or whatever. I just think it's being patient and understanding all the stories and identifying with the history that goes with them, and explaining, this is what I did, or how'd you do this, or I'm having trouble with this. What did you do to fix that? And we're sincere and we're honest. And I don't think we don't charge each other for that kind of stuff. There's no fee. I mean, one of my favorite stories ever was I was looking for a part with a guy, and he called me at a swap meet, and he said, "Hey, I'm here, man. You want me to pick it up?" It was like a $300 part. And he goes, "Yeah, yeah, man, I got you. I'll see you. I'll bring it next Friday." And he just picked it up, and I got it was unbelievable. It was like he knew what I needed. And I've been looking desperately for. Right now I have a big manhunt for a Pan Am suitcase, like the old Pan Am suitcase, to put in my luggage rack on the back of my car for one of my props. And I got people texting me, well, I found a handbag. I said, nah, man, it's got to be luggage, and like they just said, well, I found this sticker. You want to put a sticker on a whole suitcase? I'm like, well, but it's that kind of energy that people, that they support. And you can go to any place, whether, your hometown in Florida or DC or Colorado or, Portland, Oregon, where there's a lot of ex hippies that are up there with their VW buses that will genuinely care about what you need to do to continue the longevity of your Volkswagen.
100%. I love the culture. It's why I show up, man, and it's certainly why I'm doing this. So tell me about this AAA Hawaii badge that you have.
So they just don't make them anymore, and I'll have to send you a picture if you want to look at it. But it's a AAA for a long time for I think it was like their presidential membership had badges on the back of the cars, and some of them had it associated with, there was visiting the United States or traveling the United States. You didn't do it by plane, you did it by car. And there was privileges that were associated with a motor club. Like I'm associated with the motor club, AAA motor club, right? And I happened to find a California AAA honorary gold membership one, and has the California bear up top. And then I happen to be in Hawaii, and it's the crest of the Hawaiian monarchy, and it's AAA Club of Hawaii. And I welded it. I don't even know if that's a word. Welded it. I welded it to a metal piece and attached it to the license plate frame of my car. And people are like, where did you get that? And I was like, literally at a swap meet in Honolulu. Like, that's just where you find them. And so that's what makes, and plus my license plate says Mr. Mahalo.
Super cool.
Yeah.
So what's the future for you in the VW world? Do you have any other builds that you're going to work on? Any other shows that you're setting up?
So I have my show on the 27th, and I encourage everyone to jump on board the Instagram if they want to even come out at Mr. Mahalo on Instagram. And it'll that's where I put a lot of my videos of the bug, my kid driving, my wife driving.
Yeah, I've been checking you out. You got some cool
Yeah,
stuff.
and
Good
my
content.
wife's pretty playful. She's fun to be. She thinks it's ridiculous, but she loves, as long as she has her hat on. Sometimes she's like, at least let me put a hat on, because it's like the sun is a little bit unforgiving. But what I would like to do is I'd like to buy whether a bay window or a split bus, and it doesn't need to be pristine. It needs to be functioning. And I'd like definitely a Westie, and go really the last 5 or 6 years before I get too old to kind of go camping and do stuff. And there's a big push right now to shift a lot of these buses into like electric engines, electric batteries, and or put like a Subaru engine in there. And so there's options out there, but I just kind of want to get behind the wheel and meet you in Chicago and bring your car. And we don't need to go fast. We just need to go.
Yeah, dude.
And I've asked people, what's the norm? And they say, these are the guys, even with they don't have to be VWs, but it's about an hour and a half. That's about as much as you can do in these classic cars, is about an hour and a half. And so they pull over, they take breaks, they have snacks, and you just make your way down the yellow brick road and go see stuff. And that's the part about being an American, and being able to like go to state and be grateful for what we have and the beauty that's associated with it. And nobody really does anything but just appreciates each other and Mother Nature. And even if you still have your AM FM radio, you'll find a station. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, no. Well, that sounds perfect. That sounds like something I'm definitely interested in. That trip across the country like that, chilling, no agenda other than, learning the sights to see and creating new memories and stories. I think that'd be another thing for me before I'm too old too. That'd be
And they have some great ones here. They have buses to the Bay. I can't remember. I think they drive up to San Francisco. There's a couple bus trips out in Arizona. I'm not probably not saying it right. Buses in the Bay, but there's a couple.
by the bay.
Yeah, so they
You
go over
guys
there
have you
all the way
guys
to
have a
San.
pretty cool pier.
Yeah, yeah. So they do a lot of great things,
Yeah.
and there's some great guys that do really great work. I don't know if you ever get a chance to interview Robert Skinner up in the Sacramento area.
No, I
He
reached out to him. I didn't hear back, but
Yeah, he's turned into a really good
I would love to.
confidant and a good friend, and he has a lot of history. He has the Fast Times at Ridgemont High bus,
Yeah, I saw that. I read.
and he's a great gentleman. Answers your questions.
I'd love to have him on, man.
Yeah, he's a lot of history, but there's just I don't know. I think you always hang out with your friends when you have a VW and you just kind of laugh at each other, putting things together. And
A really cool time.
I've never seen a VW guy change his tire by himself. I've seen one person do all the work and about 10 guys hovering, telling him how to do it.
You're not kidding though. You're not.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody's congregating, all talking, all. You should have done it that way. It's like,
Yeah. 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 What are you doing?
you want to get down here and do it? Heck yeah, man. All right, let's hit a couple of rapid fire questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fast response, first thing that comes to mind. Favorite VW color combo of all time?
Oh, it's gotta be that pea green with the tan interior for that older split.
Okay.
With the semaphores. Gotta have the semaphores.
All right. Hard top or convertible?
Ah, convertible, man. Come on.
All right. Yeah, I know. I know. I still got to ask. So, best song to blast while you're cruising in the bug, top down.
God, that's a really good one. I would say Paul McCartney's
It'll come up. Let's keep
Man
talking.
on the Run.
Man on the Run. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
That
that's
one, and I tell you the other one a lot of people forget is if you drive at sunset, Radar Love by Golden Earring.
somebody absolutely is going to listen to that because you just said it.
Yeah.
All right. If you had to pick a daily driver, air cooled VW, which one you choosing?
I would probably, just because I know I said convertible, but I would probably pick, a early 60s regular sedan. Just, I think the 1200 engine, if it's a daily driver, it'll get you everywhere you want to go.
Yeah, I got to tell you, since my wife had lucked into this 71 Carmen Ghia, I go out and start it and drive it all the time just because it's easy and, they like to be driven. So I always make sure I'm driving it around, and that really it's a pretty valid choice a lot of times for me. It's pretty.
I don't know if you experience this either, but I know with the split buses, I remember a lot of people say the 1500 was solely made for the purpose of driving it long distances, and they found that when the car or the bus is not driven, that's when you have mechanical issues with it. And
That's why
and
I
I
said that. Man, that's why I said that. They want to be driven.
Yeah.
Because of that reason. You're right. If you don't drive them, that's when you have issues. One thing you always have to keep in your glove box.
Flashlight.
Flashlight. Good answer. Most
Yeah.
people say a 10 or a 13 millimeter.
No, I have a tool bag. And bro, I'm going to tell you this story. This is like this is how tell you how spoiled we are. Is the reason why I say flashlight is because when I drove my car at night and I'd open the door, the dome light wasn't working. And so literally I was like, okay, and you kind of use your phone, you're like, okay. But when there was drama, like I was like, I just want a flashlight. I just dropped something. I can't even find it. So Sebastian, the president of our club, he does work on it. We looked for probably about 3 hours for ground to get the dome light to work. And I was so happy when I opened the door and the light came on. it was like people were like, "Dude, that's awesome. How did you find it?" I was like, "Oh man, we had to do this and do this."
It's the little
So
things.
yeah, I mean, can you imagine the level of gratitude you have to have the dome light on? The dome light.
Yeah, man. Pretty
So
cool.
yeah, that's why I have a flashlight in my glove box.
Okay. Cool story. Where can people connect with you if they want to follow your events, if they want to check out your content?
Yeah, they can follow at Mr. Mahalo at on Instagram. Right now, if you go on Facebook for events, you can look up Mr. Mahalo Vintage Car Show number 5, a Roman numeral. There's information there. And then they can catch me on my email at 808 Mahalo at gmail.com. We're trying, when I say we, there's a couple of us, we're trying to put something here in Southern California that's specifically Volkswagen, that's associated with a Volkswagen dealership and celebrate, just a VW. But there's a lot of great stuff out here. The Bob Baker show is huge. I mean, it's huge, but I don't know if they've been able to do a show since COVID, and all the thoroughbreds come out for that one. I mean, they tell you once you're locked in, don't expect to leave that parking lot till 7, 8 o'clock at night because it's packed and it smells like oil and gas constantly. It's the exhaust of freedom.
When I don't have that smell anymore, I'm gonna miss it. That's for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Any shout outs you want to give to anybody?
I want to give a shout out to a couple guys, RJ Classics right now. They're the ones that are doing my Volkswagen air cooled community that goes out. And then I really wanted to encourage your readers out there for, if they really want to get what I call the basic context is the comprehensive illustrated history of the world's most popular car, the Beetle by Keith Suen. It's actually a large print, it's
Nice.
massive.
We can see it. Guys like us.
Yeah, you go in there and it's very simplistic and it just gives you the basic history. And this one was by Stefan Zantini, Vintage Volkswagen Beetles and Accessories. And I actually got him to autograph the front page.
Cool.
And it's a collection of just going through all the areas in all the BW models. I mean, this is ridiculous. I don't know if you can see that. I mean, that's just like crazy. I mean, that's all the accessories that came with this car.
That is absolutely beautiful.
It's gorgeous. And
Look like a
you know,
tuxedo.
it's like, the guy got every option humanly possible. And he's done a great job of not only showing what's available and photographing it, but you're just amazed. I mean, there's a coffee percolating system that's attached to the car that to me is crazy. The German editions had a very expensive shortwave radio system that they had an accessory to that was, you look at it, my wife calls it Volkswagen porn. She's like, "Can you put the book down and have dinner? What are you trying to buy now?" So, but those are great context for finding out what's out there because the Beetle is very simplistic, very, very simplistic. And I had a old timer tell me, he says, "You know why the antenna is on different sides of the car?" And I said, "Yeah, I've noticed that." And he goes, "It's because it's what was ever easiest for the dealer. That those cars didn't come with radios and antennas. Those were options that you got at the dealership. They weren't, and some of them have car lighters and some of them don't. And those were a lot of dealer options. They were pre-installed to have radios, but that's why you see a lot of the bugs have just the original faceplate on them,
Right.
and you meet some of these folks and they said, I really couldn't afford another $30 for a radio. And
Yeah.
I'm in my head, I'm thinking $30, 1962, 1963. It's a lot of money.
A lot of money. Yeah. Yeah. What does the VW lifestyle mean to you in one sentence?
Oh man, you just look at that. Why don't you just put a gun to my head? I would say owning a Volkswagen is a passionate and humble hobby. You learn patience because the car requires a lot of attention. You got to tinker with the carburetor. You got to adjust these things from time to time. You have to put
You will break down. It will leave you on
will
the
break
road.
down.
That old law that you have of if it ever leaves me stranded, I'm getting rid of it. No,
Yeah.
that's not for this culture.
It definitely it makes you patient, and it makes you appreciate the work that goes in there. And I think there's a love affair between man and his car. And it's so cliche or tacky, but there's something about spouses saying, well, where's dad? Oh, dad's in the garage. He's tinkering with Ruby. And the kids know that you're not just sitting there going through your iPhone. You're tinkering
Amen.
you're tinkering with the car, or you say, like I tell my son, like, hey, can you come out here and help me? And so, one of the stuff that's hard for me, and I just being transparent, is, the military beat me up for a long time. And so my hands hurt, and so I have, a little bit of arthritis. And so, like, adjusting the carburetor, replacing stuff after about an hour, my hands hurt. But what I can do is share that information with my kids, and, whether they replace the coil or replace the fuel pump, or, learn how to change the filter or do whatever, they're learning that. And so I still get to be a part of that process, and they get to ask the questions, well, what about this? Oh, that's a great question. Let me show you about this. And it's really not that hard. It's just different for them. My youngest, who's in the Air Force, he's like, "It's like Legos, Dad." And I'm like, "A little bit. It's a little bit like Legos. It needs to fit correctly." So his attention to detail, he can appreciate that stuff, Where I have another son who just wants to put the car in and just drive it. He's not, he loves just driving it. Where the other one wants to know the dynamics. I know that's a long answer, the more than one sentence, but it really is a love affair. It really
Well,
is.
it captured it in the first portion of it with a sentence. That was good. That was good.
Yeah. You make this happen. You guys that do these podcasts or follow on, you guys are class acts in this. And I think because I listen to a lot of not just VW, but folks that have these car podcasts, is they really come down to the history and the stories that are connected. And you have that ability to listen to people's stories. We all do, especially if you have a VW. That's the gift, is learning the history. I mean,
Amen.
it's when the lady comes up to you, I mean, I'll end this story, which was a love affair, is she bought a car and her father didn't talk to her for a year because she spent all her money on a convertible Volkswagen, and he was so upset, and she loved that car. She loved that car. And when she moved into assisted living or over 55 community, she had to sell it. And she had had that car for 50 years, 50 years. And it's those stories,
Amen. That's why I do this. Those are the stories I like to pull out and broadcast and share. And as the shorts that come out from these episodes and these little mini stories, you really start to see the impact that these little tiny stories have on things like TikTok and Instagram. It's like, wait a minute, that little sentence, that 30 seconds got 1,600 views in an hour or 2 hours. It's like, wow, it really is as interesting as I thought it would be. And that's a wrap for this episode of Dub Life Diaries. Thanks for sitting shotgun and diving into these incredible stories of the people and doves that drive their dreams. Until next time, keep the engine humming and the wheels turning, and always follow the road that inspires you. This is Joe Person signing off. I'll catch you on the next ride.